2017 has been a year filled with tensions. Despite Washington's warning of war of fire and fury, North Korea continued to issue threats and nuclear tests throughout the year before declaring itself a nuclear power. International community imposed the sanctions against North Korea, but differences still remained between Washington and Beijing, which has fueled the speculation of a new Cold War pitting South Korea, Japan, and the United States against North Korea, China, and Russia. The Moon Jae-in administration has been striving for a peaceful resolution to the North Korea nuclear crisis since it took office in May, but it has proven difficult. On this week's Peninsula 24, we'll give you an overview of North Korean nuclear issues in 2017 and what the future looks like regarding the Korean Peninsula in 2018. As always, I'm joined by two experts in the studio. To my left, Professor Kim Jae-chun from Sogang University. Professor Kim, thank you for joining us in the studio.
It's good to be here.
And as always in the studio with me, Dr. Kim Chang-su, a research fellow emeritus at the KAIDA. Dr. Kim, it's always good to have you in the show.
Thank you again for having me.
Okay, so 2017, what a year. As I mentioned, it has been very eventful, I have to say, with a lot of tension and the concerns. So President Moon Jae-in took office in May 2017, and North Korea has issued 11 missile tests. And the 5 of them took place within a month between May and June, and there's additional nuclear tests in September. So there's a lot. And what's the motivation behind this?
I think North Korean leadership has this single-minded determination to obtain nuclear weapons country status. And I think that is the reason why North Korea issued 11 missile provocations, yes, and also another nuclear test in September, even after the new South Korean Moon Jae-in government took office, and he made a number of peace gestures toward North Korea, but North Korea continued missile provocations. I think the reason is to be recognized as a de facto nuclear weapons country status. If the U.S. is adamant about not recognizing North Korea as a de facto nuclear weapons country, it is very likely for North Korea to continue provocations in 2018 as well. What is peculiar about this year, 2017's provocation, is that some of the missile tests were intended to prove that they have this ICBM capability that is targeting the mainland of the United States. And I think the recent Hwasong 15 testing in November had that objective. So as I said, and they, one important thing is that they declared that they have obtained finally the nuclear power status eventually. So the intention is to be recognized by the international community, by the U.S. as a de facto nuclear weapons country status, so that in 2018 they might actually make some peace gesture toward the international community. As long as you do not really touch our existing nuclear weapons country status, we may be, we are willing to open negotiation with the United States, some kind of arms reduction talk, if not the denuclearization
arms
talk.
reduction, not the denuclearization. Well, but it's very frequent in 1 month between May and June. There's 5 times missile provocation. Is it normal?
I think because Mr. Moon Jae-in took office in May, and North Korea is trying to get the upper hand in any possible negotiation with South Korea. That's why they really speed up all the nuclear weapons, and missile tests in such a short time. I think looking at the whole year, throughout the year, there was as many as like 5 missile tests, including 11 major ones, and 1 hydrogen bomb test in September. I think your question, what is the motivation behind these so many, missile launches? I think definitely is to get the recognition from the United States, international world, that North Korea has achieved this kind of nuclear power status. This has not been recognized by the United States, South Korea, and many other countries, not just for diplomatic reasons, but for technical reasons as well. because we've come to know there are tremendous big gaps in the capability to reach the final stage of re-entry vehicle, which is very hard to achieve. I think that's why they speed up all these tests, and I think they'll try to continue to test more missile tests, because until they get the kind of confirmation, recognition from the United States that they really reached that kind of status. But even though they declared that we are now a full nuclear power, because it was a response to his former annual address in a New Year's address. I think Mr. Kim will make the same address again there. We have already arrived at that kind of status, but we'll continue to refine our technology to get the absolutely no mistake about their capability. Maybe the time is coming up for the North Korean leadership and the United States and also South Korea to seriously thinking about the price and the value of really talking with each other on these specific issues.
Well, the most recent missile provocation was conducted on November 29th of Hwasong 15, and they declare, and also a lot of experts agree that that puts the whole continent of the United States within the range. I don't know, maybe there's some disagreement, but it seems to be the big consensus of that. So what measures do you think the North Korea will do the next year, the 2018, to
definitely
be recognized?
The re-entry vehicle, because they have not shown the kind of capability to do that. So according to many experts in the United States, many people in many journalists, and they predict that they will come to that kind of stance pretty early, maybe by the early of next year, 2018. But some people still are very skeptical because they have shown that kind of tremendous lack of capability, the real capability for the re-entry vehicle. So that will take maybe even 2 or 5 years. Or somebody even suggested that they have to really revise the whole program. Otherwise, they cannot fully reach that kind of status. So these are all kind of skeptics and conspiracy theories in Washington area. But I think North Korea, because they made a vow that they have already reached that kind of status, and they're going to reach to do more to advance that kind of status, to get the final recognition from the United States and the international world.
Yeah, I think it's very important for us to think hard why the North Korean leadership declared that they have accomplished decades-long objective of obtaining nuclear power status when, as you said, they have yet to secure atmospheric re-entry technology, and they have yet to prove that they have militarized their nuclear warheads that they can mount to the top of Hwasong 15. So we have to think why they hurriedly declared the objective of the nuclear power status. Technically speaking, they do not have that nuclear power status because they don't have a deterrent against the United States with current technology. I think part of the reason is a domestic political reason. I mean, to mobilize, rally public support behind the leadership. Another reason, I think, is to talk about negotiation with the United States. Talking about the possibility of opening up negotiation with the United States. As I said, I mean, as long as we can keep our nuclear power status intact and admit it, I mean, we are getting very close to it. Well, maybe not now, but very close to it. So deal with it and then don't touch our existing nuclear weapons capability. And as long as you admit that, then we can talk about arms reduction. I think that is a possible move that North Korean leadership can take in coming year.
Well, what really concerned a lot of Korean people throughout the 2017 was a military option by the United States. On December 18th, Trump administration revealed a new national security strategy, and it has a text like, quote, "The U.S. remains ready to respond with overwhelming force to North Korean aggression," end quote. So it sends a message that U.S. is willing to use a military action if there is any, the North Korea's threat, I mean, to the U.S. continent. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right, because given all the Mr. Trump's kind of strong stance in dealing with North Korea, he made it very clear we're going to deal a very strong overwhelming blow to the North Korean leadership if you dare to strike us first. I think this is a not just a rhetorical remark, but this should be a very principled position by the Washington leadership, even before the Trump administration, that if North Korea initiate a war against us, you will definitely punish them.
If war comes, make no mistake, the North Korean regime will be utterly destroyed.
I think this has been our policy, U.S. and South Korean policy for the last 10 years. And Trump made it very clear in his national security strategy again. It has been our position, and we'll continue to maintain this position vis-a-vis North Korea. If you dare to strike us, we'll strike you many, many more times, I think.
But it's, the beauty is
but
in
that
the
does
eyes
not
of the
mean that they're
beholder.
going to strike first, because this is all basically deterrence purposes. We have to show we will definitely deter any threats or any strikes, but we are going to definitely strike you back if you initiate a kind of strike. So this is makes perfect sense to me. All governments have their own, diplomatic and military options on the table before they really get to the negotiating table.
But it is about that they perceive the threat, or there's a strike, actual strike against the United States. I mean, that's the part that a lot of Korean people are very nervous about. What level would you perceive? I mean, the United States perceive as a...
I think the U.S. will be using military options preventively.
Okay.
I mean, if, as Dr. Kim mentioned, if North Korea's attack is imminent, we, as in the U.S. and South Korea, have no option but to use military option to preempt the imminent attack of North Koreans. But using military options preemptively, there are too many downsides to it. We can't really risk a general war taking place once again on the Korean Peninsula. So that's the reason why South Korean president is advising the U.S. to exercise extreme caution here. But that said, if North Korea launches another missile test, and it is expected that the missiles would fall in, say, exclusive economic zone of the United States near Guam and California shore, falling in the exclusive economic EEZ of the United States, I think it is very likely for the U.S. to try to operationalize a missile defense system of the United States to neutralize North Korean missile tests missiles before landing. So that, I think, is a possibility.
I see. Well, the cooperation and mutual assistance are necessary and becoming far more important facing the North Korea's nuclear crisis. So we have connected experts in other countries involved in this issue. They also have given their insights on the show throughout the year in 2017. We have Dr. Bruce Bennett, a senior research fellow at the RAND Corporation, and also Dr. Tong Zhao, the research fellow at the Nuclear Policy Program at the Carnegie Tsinghua Center in Beijing, and Dr. Georgi Toloraya, Director of Korea Research at the Institute of Economics of the Russian Academy of Science. Well, first of all, I'd like to find out how each of these three countries has addressed the North Korea nuclear crisis in the year of 2017. Well, let's start with Dr. Bruce Bennett.
Well, President Trump has said that all options are on the table. From a military perspective, we usually talk about the term DIME. DIME is diplomatic, information, military, and economic. So all four of those dimensions are on the table. The military is the most obvious, that President Trump has promised, if necessary, to use military force. Economic, we've been doing economic sanctions. Diplomatic, the U.S. has indicated it is willing to negotiate with North Korea. And information, probably the element we have used the least, but which North Korean defector Tae Young-ho, the former deputy ambassador in the UK, argued to Congress that that's the most important element, that is where Kim Jong-un is most vulnerable. And presumably the U.S. administration will try and actually use some of those information options.
Well, Dr. Tong Zhao, do you think China has fulfilled its role in addressing North Korea's nuclear crisis in 2017 as the international community demanded?
I think there's still a gap between Chinese implementation of sanctions and the international expectations. China has become extremely concerned about the possibility of a military conflict breaking out over the peninsula. And as a result, we have seen China taking precautionary measures, such as preparing for refugee camps along the border. And China has shown increasing interest to talking with the United States in so-called contingency planning and crisis management. Those are also very new measures that we haven't seen China take before.
And Dr. Toleraya, Russia became a key mediator in the North Korean nuclear crisis in the second half of 2017. And what is it made Russia actively engage in the matter?
During the last half of this year and after coming to power of President Trump, the situation has become very dangerous because U.S. took a very aggressive position, saying that it will destroy North Korea, and the military option is quite probable. So it became dangerous to Russia. After all, it's just across the river from North Korea, while U.S. is across the ocean. So we took active diplomatic measures to diffuse this crisis, to promote diplomacy, as Russia can speak to all partners equally.
Okay, now what policy do you think your country will have toward North Korea, and what direction will it take in 2018?
I think that will very much depend upon what Kim Jong-un says in his January 1st speech. I can foresee him taking one of two approaches. One approach would be to say he's decided, now that his nuclear development program is completed, which is what North Korea has been saying, that he's going to be a responsible nuclear power. He's not going to threaten anymore. He's going to significantly reduce his tests, and he wants the outside world to stop sanctions against him. If that's the case, I think President Trump will want to negotiate and work out the deals of such a thing. If, however, Kim Jong-un says, no, I'm interested in pursuing nuclear and missile issues far more, I'm going to expand those efforts, then he's no longer really concerned just about regime survival. He's trying to posture.
There is also a chance that North Korea might conduct a combination test of ICBM and nuclear warhead in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If those provocations take place, I think China will consider tougher sanctions and even consider to reduce or cut off the oil supply. So that will make the situation look very different in 2018.
They might be thinking in Pyongyang that now that they're immune to U.S. involvement into a conflict, they may try to unify Korea by threatening South Korea and maybe changing the government in South Korea. But I think all the countries, including Russia, are not interested in such a scenario, so we should prevent it by stopping this nuclear missile program at this stage, by freezing it, and creating a system that would prevent North Korea's attempt to have an aggression against South Korea.
Well, I'd like to ask this question to all three of you. Which country do you think will have to play the biggest role regarding North Korea nuclear crisis in 2018?
Well, the USA has the unique role of agreeing or not agreeing to dialogue, but very much will depend on South Korea. If it takes the sort of driver's seat and promote dialogue, I think that will be of great assistance to the process.
I think that potentially both South Korea and the U.S. have to share that role. Kim Jong-un does not want to negotiate with South Korea, and if South Korea doesn't take a major role in probably the information component, it won't have a seat at the table. It won't be involved, and the U.S. will have to take the lead.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry openly said that we should pursue a long-term denuclearization strategy, which implies that in the near-term future, China doesn't think it's likely that North Korea will voluntarily give up its nuclear weapons. and therefore we should pursue a long-term, step-by-step strategy to gradually roll back its nuclear capabilities. In this regard, I think most Chinese experts would agree that the United States plays the most important role in starting this long-term process.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your insights. So all three of our foreign experts suggested that the U.S. and South Korea should play a biggest role in 2018 to resolve North Korea's nuclear crisis. Does it surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. Agreed that South Korea, together with the U.S., will have to play probably the most important role here. But I think the rest of the countries, really, the international community as a whole, will have to play a bigger role, because North Korean threat is not limited to such a few countries such as South Korea, the United States, and also Japan. The threat is universal. North Korea threat that the North Korea has posed has this universal nature, in which case the international community will have to come to possess such a perception that this really is an international problem. I think more and more countries, and countries that have been traditionally favorable to North Korea, such as African countries, Sudan and Uganda, they are cutting off military ties with North Korea, and also Southeast Asian countries, traditionally favorable to North Korea, the Philippines and Thailand, they are cutting off economic ties with North Korea. So I think the international community as a whole will have to play a bigger role, and also China and Russia, they will have to play a bigger role here instead of just following UN Security Council resolutions in passive manner. They will have to come to a realization that North Korea is no longer a security buffer zone to their countries. Rather, it is a strategic burden, and if you keep siding with North Korea, it'll backfire, and it's going to undermine your legitimate security interests in the region.
Well, the year of 2018 is also very important for North Korea because it's the 70th anniversary of establishment of North Korean regime. So a lot of people are expecting what Kim Jong-un would say in the New Year's address. What do you think?
We are talking about this kind of what would be the feature of the North Korea's New Year's address. But I think, Dr. As Bennett mentioned, they might do something different because now they proclaim they now already a kind of nuclear full power status. So they're going to do something to soothe the concerns and worries about the outside world so that they can pave a way for kind of future talks with the United States. So that's possible if they are smart enough to do that. Otherwise, they're going to might stick to that kind of the position without even thinking about the altering their status because they know their current status, their technical capability for reentry vehicles. So if they, I don't know, it's up to them to choose which path they were going to follow, being very strongly, overwhelmingly, and mistakenly strong response again, or maybe some kind of gestures so that they have, they can sell theirs at their best price before they're gone, I think.
Professor Kim, what do you expect in the New Year's address?
But I think Kim Jong-un, because in 2013 he declared what is known as Myungjin strategy, the objective which is to develop nuclear weapons and the economy at the same time, simultaneously. So now that he declared the completion of the first mission, nuclear power status, he might say that he would continuously work on the economy, the second mission of the Myungjin. Maybe he might take this opportunity, using this as a venue to send a message to Americans. We are a nuclear power country, so as long as we can keep existing nuclear power intact, we can talk, really. That kind of message that I think North Korea could impart to Americans. So year 2018, I think it's going to be a mixed bag of opportunities and also risks. North Korea, on the one hand, will be looking for an opportunity to talk with the Americans and also South Koreans, hopefully. But if the U.S. is really adamant about North Korea bringing denuclearization as a precondition to negotiation, it is quite likely for North Korea to continue issuing provocations. So I think it's going to be a mixed bag. But hopefully it's going to be more of an opportunity than risks.
I see. Well, 2017 has been a very eventful year. All the eyes were on the North Korea at some point and another, but we hope that we can shift to the better in 2018. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your insight today. And this has been our final edition on the Peninsula 24. We'd like to thank you all very much for tuning into our program and your support over the past years. It has been an honor and pleasure to share our views with you, and we'll be back with a new program to keep you updated on the issues surrounding the Korean Peninsula. Thank you again, and goodbye.